We know how difficult it's going to be, and it is for the charity sector. I just think there is power in us working together more.
Welcome to a brand new episode and a brand new season of Starts at the Top, our podcast about leading differently. I'm Zoe Amma.
And I'm Paul Thomas. Our podcast exists to help leaders and their teams understand what they need to do differently today to prepare for the world of tomorrow. We started Starts at the Top as a podcast about digital disruption, but we soon realised that leaders were telling us about something more urgent and important, about how traditional ways of leading had changed forever.
We make it our mission to speak to leaders who are carving out new ways of leading, covering topics from emerging tech to inclusion, from remote work to mental health and resilience, and from climate change to AI. If it's about the status of leadership in 2025, it will be on our podcast.
And we're not here for the shiny corporate case studies. We want to share stories from leaders who have learned lessons and made progress the hard way. We want our podcast to share ideas and inspire others. And just 2 months into 2025, the face of leadership is changing once again. Zoe, the start of 2025 has been one of the most turbulent in recent memory. Are you ready to go again in 2025?
Ready as I'll ever be.
Or never be. In this episode, we'll be sharing an energising conversation, and I think we all need one of those this week, with Kwesi Afful, the Executive Director of Digital and Marketing at Scope. Kwesi shares insights into his transition from the NHS to the charity sector and the importance of collaboration and partnerships to achieve greater impact. Kwesi also tells us about how he's built the deletion and removal of his job by April 2026 into Scope's business plan. And I think this is bold, but pretty fantastic. His is a transformational role, and this is saying, I'm confident that I'll help us get there and achieve our goals. And when I've done so, thank you and good night.
It's a very bold move indeed, and one that I really admire. And ever since we spoke to Kwesi, it's got my brain ticking over about how we approach succession planning and leadership across the sector. Before we hear from him, though, I wanted to share a couple of projects that are coming up that might be of interest to our listeners. So I wanted to say a little bit about something which some people might have seen come up in the charity sector news. A couple of weeks ago, ourselves and also CAST announced that we would be launching a charity AI task force, which is bringing together, it's actually 30 organisations from across the sector. It's including funders such as the Lottery and Lloyds Bank Foundation, but it's also including a whole host of charities, large charities such as Shelter, but also some small charities as well, who I think are vitally important to shaping the ethical and responsible adoption of AI across charities. And we've also got some other organisations in the mix as well, such as Microsoft. And I suspect there may be some other organisations in and around the sector who will be joining us before too long. The reason why I wanted to share this was just to briefly explain a bit about what we're going to do. There have obviously been more people talking about AI across the sector with growing urgency and concern, as with many other sectors over the last year. And Dan Such from CAST and myself have been bringing leaders together to try and work out how we find our way through this as a sector with very limited resources. And this obviously comes off the back of some of the developments that are going on in other sectors. So, Paul, you and I had a discussion just before Christmas, which people can hear in previous episodes, about AI adoption across the private sector, and in your case, specifically the worlds of accountancy. And we also talked a bit about the trends that we're seeing in the public sector as well. So what we're trying to do with the task force is we want to help develop a collective voice, a collective approach for ethical and responsible and inclusive AI adoption across the sector. And our first job is going to be to respond to the government's AI action plan, which some of our listeners will have seen was published in the middle of January, with no mention at all of civil society, which is somewhat surprising. And yet charities will be absolutely mission critical to its successful delivery, because government has said that AI needs to work for everyone. And they've talked about some of the work that is going to involve communities, such as the AI growth zones in various areas of the UK. So I think that the charity sector could play an incredibly important role in the delivery of the plan. And we also need to look at how we approach AI adoption in a collective way, and how we can be more collaborative in how we learn together, how AI is funded, and also how charities of all sizes can influence its development as well. So it's early days. The task force is just getting started, but we're really excited about what we are going to do, and we will be sharing more updates with everyone in due course. We really want this to be a conversation, though, because it's really important to what we're doing to understand all the other AI initiatives going on across the sector. Now, Dan and I will know about some of them just because of the nature of the work we do, but we're also really keen to hear about all the other initiatives that might be happening. So perhaps you're a group of mental health charities working together on developing a collective approach to AI. Maybe you're a group of environmental charities who have come together to develop a collective approach to AI. Whatever you're doing, whether it's cause related, whether it's region related, whether it involves some kind of community of shared interest, we really, really want to hear about it. And we also want to hear case studies of charities who are using these technologies really effectively, whatever their size is. Also, where you may have some cautionary tales as well, where you have spotted that AI is not working in a way that might be impacting your beneficiaries. So what I'll do is in the show notes, I will put a link to how people can contact us. We are getting a lot of messages and a lot of very nice offers of help and case studies and insights, which is brilliant. Please keep them coming. We've set up a specific mailbox so that you can contact us directly, and Dan and I will read every single one of those messages, and we will get back to everyone as soon as we can. But please bear with us, because we are getting a lot of emails, which we really appreciate. So I'll pop that in the show notes.
And we will continue to track progress through the podcast, I think, and keep up to date with how you're going. And I was just reflecting as you were speaking, you're absolutely right. In the world that I exist in, not only have you got all the major sort of accountancy bodies, the ICAW, ACCA, the training bodies, all those sorts of organisations coming out with their own guidance or advice around AI, but you've also got most of the bigger organisations who have the budgets to plough into AI development coming out and influencing the firms below. And then on top of that, you have, I was just reading the other week, the IOIC, the Institute of Internal Communications, have issued some brief guidance and sort of talked about how they're going to follow that up. And also all of the marketing bodies like CIM, CIPR, all of those have their own version of the truth. And in the end, you don't really know which way to turn. You have to kind of read it all and absorb it all and use AI to start to make sense of it, which is ironic. But yeah, we'll keep an eye on what Zoe's doing, and we'll feedback here as much and as often as we possibly can.
Thank you. And just briefly on AI, and you mentioned resources there, I just wanted to share a very quick update on the consultation that's open for the new version of the Charity Digital Code of Practice. Speaking of AI, for the very first time, it includes best practice guidance for small and large charities about AI, but also about data. So we've got much more about that in the code this time around, and also more about inclusion as well. So please do take a look at that. Again, I'll pop the link in the show notes, and we'd really appreciate any feedback, because ultimately this is the sector's code.
Perfect. Yep. All feedback welcome. You can even send it into Starts at the Top. We promise we will read everything that comes into us as well. So please do get in touch. And as I touched on before, now's time for our interview with Kwesi Afful from Scope. And this, I think, was a great way to start the season, because the conversation was very hopeful. very relaxed. We had a really fun discussion about hiring Lime bikes and cycling through London as well. But I really enjoyed the conversation, and I thought it was well worth us sharing this first, because there's quite a lot of negativity around leadership and world leadership in particular at the moment. And Kwei has a very hopeful and inspirational view of leadership and what he's trying to do with Scope. So now, without further ado, for our interview with Kwei. We would like to welcome Kwesi Afful, or Kwei, to our podcast. Starts at the top. Kwei is the Executive Director of Digital and Marketing at Scope, and the team that oversees digital, data and technology and marketing functions in Scope. With a strategic vision that underpins Scope's 10-year strategy, Kwesi is dedicated to enhancing both internal and external operations. He has developed a robust partnership model with external stakeholders and designing a new digital operating model for the organisation. Kwesi's role involves implementing sustainable hardware refresh strategies and driving insight-driven initiatives. They're known for their ability to foster collaboration across various departments, ensuring that Scope's digital and marketing efforts are aligned with the organisation's broader goals. Welcome to Starters at the Top, Kwei.
Thank you both very much for having me. Looking forward to our chat.
And I'm aware in that intro I've called you Kwei and Kwesi all over the place, so we just need to make sure you're comfortable with both.
I am interchangeable. It's fine.
Oh, we're so happy to have you here, Kwei. Thank you so much for joining us, especially as before we started recording, we talked about how busy you are in the run up to Christmas. And I can see why you're so busy. I mean, that's one heck of a brief you've got there. Really exciting to see that breadth of work that you're leading at Scope. Can you tell us about that? Can you tell us about what you've got in train, the programs of digital and tech change that you're leading, and what the story is so far? How's it all going?
Well, it's interesting. In other words, if it was, and the reason why it's interesting is because previously my background, last 18, 19 years, have been in the NHS, probably the last 11 or 12 in digital. And obviously, NHS, very much loved, a behemoth of an organisation, 1.6 million employees, and a substantial budget. And with the NHS, I'll just have a lane or programs I had to lead, and you would be able to get pot of funding to be able to deliver that. And it was, fairly easy to secure that funding once you just did a business case. But in the charity sector, it really has been an eye-opener, because obviously everything you have to spend is based on what the charity was able to raise the previous year. So I've been very conscious of the fact that even though I really did know the value of a pound for an organisation, at Scope I've been forced to really scrutinise all of the decisions that I've been able to recommend to the board or execs or the teams that I've worked with. So it's been really interesting to take that approach, because I suppose in any job we do, we should be conscious of funding we receive, funding we're using, what we're currently spending, because especially for a charity, how we use our spend is critically important. So as you said in the intro and the bio, Paul, making sure that anything from a digital vision, digital strategy, it was key that it married up and marries up to the outworking of the organisation strategy. I'm not over here doing a few things which are pet projects. I've got to make sure that teams, the skills the teams have, our capability, all are feeding in to our goals, and ultimately reducing and getting rid of disability inequality, which is Scope's vision. So it's been really interesting, and I think that's been good for me, because it's challenged me to be a better leader, to democratize what I'm preparing, so sharing it a lot more than what I maybe would do, and making sure it fully aligns with the different disabled panels of disabled people that we engage with here at Scope. So I've had to understand that even though I have a line manager, I answer to the organisation, to the trustees, and I think that's been a good thing. Some people may be scared of that, but I think it then proves why possibly they made the right choice in me. So it's been an interesting journey. But I suppose with regards to what we're doing, so what's been great is that I've really had to think about how we can enhance our internal infrastructure and also externally how we are delivering our strategy. So a twofold approach. So with that, this has included looking at traditional technology stacks, having a traditional development team that maybe looks at your website, your platforms. Then you look at obviously your data infrastructure, your technology stack and infrastructure. And have to understand that as a charity, we to fund that, is going to be very difficult. So really to make this charity sustainable, been looking at how new technologies and transitioning to that can help us to focus less on pro code or professional code tools and development to a more low code tools approach and strategy for delivery. Now, just very briefly, for people that may not know what low code is low code is a software development approach that essentially allows teams to develop digital solutions and create enterprise applications with minimal need for coding, so either low code or actually no code. So, low code development platforms provide users with, a suite of tools, custom code components which are self-generated, and that sort of boilerplate scripts to be able to work with. And then users can develop new processes and applications efficiently based on what you actually need, and all without requiring extensive code writing and script testing. And because these platforms provide a visual sort of development environment where possible with drag and drop capabilities, but also accessible for people that have visual impairments, anyone in our organization can design and create business applications. And that was key for me, sustainability of whatever it was we did as a strategy, that it wouldn't be, oh gosh, we've had 2 people leave that are professional developers, we now have to employ 2 expensive professional developers. It's 2 people leave. Well, how do we train them up on our low code tools to still to do and fulfill the function?
Wow, that's brilliant. And it's really fascinating as well to hear how you're kind of setting out your stall a bit as an organisation on that low code and no code side of things. Because absolutely, I think there's so much potential for charities to do more of that. And on that note about potential, I was really struck when we chatted a few weeks ago about the amazing work that you're doing, making your tech as accessible for staff as much as that thinking externally about how to make everything accessible. Can you tell us a bit more about your work on that side of things?
Yeah, and I mean, even that accessible journey. So it's really interesting that. So in the NHS, my previous roles, whenever you were sending a document to someone, you'd PDF it. It's fine. Everyone can access that. I'm sure they can. And there are different objects within the PDF, but understanding how inaccessible PDFs are without careful editing and saving elements of that is something I had to learn very quickly at Scope. And it's very interesting when we thought about then broader the tools. There was one decision we were making around how we were going to use this new tool to be able to really allow our staff to be able to do great things in terms of delivering a strategy. I was about to sign up for this thing because we tested it with a few people, and then our digital accessibility team said, well, actually, it's not accessible for colleagues. And I was like, oh, are you sure? Because, and what was really good was that then I was able to really go on understanding and accepting why it's so important to make things accessible for everyone. So it's what we do now is that we take an approach to only work in commissioning tools that are fully accessible, or they have an 18-month maybe roadmap of making the changes that our digital accessibility team recommend to make that tool accessible. And that's really interesting because you are standing up for something then, aren't you? You know, you are potentially having to make a few trade-offs to champion accessibility properly. Um, but taking that stance, largely, most organizations are willing to go on that journey with you. And so what's been really good is making sure that that is one of the top things that we do prioritize is important, because what's the point in us being a disability charity if a tool excludes a number of our colleagues who then it goes to all of the ways in which they've been excluded throughout their life because accessibility has just been an afterthought or just a, well, you can just cope with that. You know, I was really helped very quickly to see why we need to stand up for that. And whilst that may mean we use tools that may not be the latest or the ones that would be able to deliver in a quicker space, quicker time frame our goals or things relating to our strategy, doing the right thing with regards to this hasn't really disadvantaged us at all. And it's really, I think, impressed upon organizations that have wanted to work with us.
I think that's so brilliant, because this is one of my frustrations with what we sometimes see in the charity digital skills report, that those
Yeah.
needs around inclusion and accessibility are not always factored in when people are procuring or when they're
No.
specking out
No.
what's going to help people and help them increase their impacts. And you're absolutely right. You've got to put down a line in the sand, and that absolutely fits with your mission and your vision. And I would love to see more charities do that. I think it's so important.
It is. It's really tricky though, because what you have to do is think, okay, well, if we're going to make it accessible, there are trade-offs. You know, we may not get a lot of the features that we need for a few months, or it may limit us, or you know, by not just going off with an off-the-shelf solution, we've got to spend a little bit longer. We've got to negotiate with the organization. Could you implement this? But it's all worth it. And even if financially it means a little bit more, then what I've had to do with certain tools is reduce spend in other areas to be able to do that. Again, that's really part of my job. To not just say, "Oh no, we're just going to go with that because it's an easy life for me, and I can jump on Zoe and Paul's podcast and rave about how good we are." But no, it's really around, okay, if you are the leader, director for this, and you want to champion this, then you know you really do need to use your loaf and you know be able to do that and to work differently and to hold yourself to account.
You opened the conversation by saying that you know you're within the charity environment, you're also restricted funds wise.
Yeah.
It creates a sense of creativity and more investigation to find out that you are getting the value that you need to deliver.
Exactly, and I think you have to, if you take this mentality of, well, you know, it's going to cost X, we haven't got X, we can't do anything, and then you just sort of give up and moan about, oh, we've got no funding. Well, no, I mean, I'll use the analogy of an organisation at scope, any charity. I suppose it's coming to a time of the year when everyone's going to be doing lots of shopping. If you've got a budget of £50, £150 and £500, you know, your behaviour is going to be very different, isn't it? And I think that maybe like a big organisation, corporate organisation that may have that be example, you know, of that £500, they can just procure this, a drop of a hat, just get that tech, and not worry too much because the funding is there. But if you have £50 and, you know, if you, as I go back to an analogy of you're going to go shopping, you're going to be so careful, right? If I get that, when I go to that aisle, we're going to have to get that. We're going to have to make a substitute. And that just means you're being more disciplined. So my theory is that charities should be much more efficient. So, you know, when you think about big organizations or private, you know, we don't have to name any that have deep pockets, charities should be the ones that are the most efficient the best run, and that they use the funding extremely wisely. And to do that, you do have to think differently and not wastefully. And that's the approach which I'm trying to take here at Scope.
Yeah, brilliant. I think that's great leadership. That's great leadership. That's good accountability. And one of the things that I really notice about our sector, and Paul, I'm interested to hear whether you feel this happens in the private sector where I know you operate, but I sometimes think that we look at tech decisions as charities. We always treat them as not being like other leadership decisions, but they 100% are. And what you've done there is you've followed your leadership compass, which is orientated around your values to do the right thing by your tech stack and by Scope, which is by your users ultimately, which is brilliant. So just on that note about accessible tech, when we chatted a few weeks ago, we talked about the product you and your team have been developing with Deloitte, an accessible Gen AI tool, which is up for 3 awards. So can you tell us about it? Sounds really exciting. I'd love to hear about it and what you've learned from it, and also anything you can share on cross-sector collaboration as well.
Yes. No, and I think it's really interesting. So Deloitte, we are their charitable partner and have been so for a few years, and they've gone a long way into helping Scope deliver on its previous strategy and also our new one as well. And they approached Scope. So I had a meeting with them just with regards to, I think it was, general things from a technology perspective and what we were trying to do, what they're trying to do. And then they just said, well, actually, we have a generative, GPT tool, like the most popular one out there at the moment. But the difference is that it's, sort of got the business grade. It's got these guardrails on it. So, it really keeps things professional, it's secure. Data's not just going into the ether of building up a large language model or LLM. And they said, it'd be great, we'd like to just give it to you as a tool, and it'd be great to see if your colleagues and can look at how we can make it fully accessible. And we just, we want to really democratize the use of AI, and that's their big thing at Deloitte, is democratizing the use of AI. They feel is the best way in which we'll be able to use AI for good. And what was really interesting with that, I was skeptical. So I've worked with lots of consultancies, and when they said that, I was like, what's the trade-off here? Is this going to be a balanced, our objectives and their objectives? Because you can think initially that you should just be eternally grateful as a charity that would never in a million years have the funding to develop its own large language model and accessible tool. And that wasn't the thing with Deloitte. And what was really good, is that we were able to re-articulate what the objectives were for us with regards to this. So it was initially a safe AI tool. We knew some of our colleagues were using some of the freely available ones. We needed to quite quickly put in some guidelines to help them with regards to that. But then, this tool would be something safe. None of the data would go to Deloitte. We would be able to make, a lot of recommendations on making it fully accessible, do that testing like we've done with other tools, be able to improve this tool that they use internally for their staff and so their disabled colleagues at Deloitte could have an accessible tool. So we've been doing that, going back and forth, and what we've been doing as well is thinking about the bigger picture. So for me, great that we can get it for our staff, get them used to using AI, not being scared, not thinking they're going to be replaced, but using the tool, getting used to AI. But the value add for me was thinking again about how marrying this as a digital strategy objective to the organization objectives is that we want to support as many disabled people into employment as possible and gaining skills and things and experience that will help them to fill the gap of the skill shortage we know we have in this country, not just now, but over the next few years. So that was an overarching goal. I said, brilliant, but we need to agree that that's where you could sort of support us in doing that, speaking to government, how we could really unleash this. And they fully agreed. So I think, brilliant journey, gone back and forth. We've been making it accessible, sending suggestions to make it a fully accessible tool, and hopefully the latest edits that we've sent through our testing will be applied, and that in the new year be a fully accessible tool that we have partnered with them on. Amazing. But I think, to your point that you just mentioned, Zoe, these are the things of, when you're doing that cross-sector collaboration, obviously there are objectives that both sides want, and it's about being cognizant of that, but not always thinking, oh, well, they're the big fish in the pond, we're the small fish, we're just grateful to be using the tool. Of course we're grateful, but what is your charitable purpose? How does this address something? And also remember, the social value you're giving back, it's called social value for a reason. You are adding social value to this organization, which could be profit making, substantial, by showing that this partnership shows collaboration at its best. And that's what I would say is that, the value of your charity, your purpose, 100% is equitable to what they're bringing to the table. Don't diminish that. Don't just back down and think, oh, well, we would like to do this, but let's not worry about that. We're just grateful. No, you've got a purpose from a social perspective, which is for the greater benefit of humanity, whatever it is, or whatever your charitable cause is. It's for that greater purpose, which is why we're all here as humans. So therefore, that is worth more even than what they're bringing to the table because of the impact you're going to have. So that's what I would say. Cross-sector collaboration, stand up tall really when you go and speak with organizations. Don't be timid. Just directly contact them. Hi, it'd be great to partner on this. You have, collaborative thing here. This is the value we could add. It'd be great to talk about a partnership.
I love that point about standing up tall. So cross-sector collaborations around AI and emerging tech, they are so on my radar at the moment, because I think that we've got so little proprietary tech as a sector. Yeah. We've got we've got a skills gap and a capacity gap as well. So the only way through this is really to partner with other sectors, as you were saying. And what I love about what you've described there, I love your thing about standing up tall, because if we don't go into those collaborations as equal partners, and if we don't know our value, and if we don't fight for it and negotiate it for it as well, in terms of whatever the financial side of it is, or the IP side of it, or even the ethical side of it as well, that's where we're not going to increase our social, our social impact. So we have to fight for that. We really have to push for it.
Definitely have to push for it. And, there is as I said, you just think about what it is that your charity is trying to achieve by working with these emerging tech companies, large and small. They are helping you to have the impact you need for your charitable purpose. And you 100% are not a small fish in a pond with big fishes. They were just fishes. And you really are trying to just be able to get those partnerships to have the impact you need for your charity. You can't do it by yourself. We know that we can't. And whether or not we'll get onto this, I would love to see more charities working together on things. It would be. I just think there is power in us working together more to trying to do things like this, rather than oh no, we're doing this over here. We won't. We won't share all. We've done a lot of the legwork. You've got to do your own legwork. No. We know how difficult it's going to be, and it is for the charity sector. Let's work together as well as cross-sector to have the impact we need.
You can be sure that they will see the value in working with you as an organisation. They will have done that calculation for themselves. So absolutely, you need to do it. You're on your side as well. And I just think it's part of the conversation. It's why we set up this podcast, and why it's called why we sort of do what we do. Is you're absolutely right. There are causes that we are all working towards being able to solve, and opportunities for collaboration cross-sector, but also within the charity sector itself, in order to further advance those causes.
exactly.
There should be more of that cross
Yeah.
that in sector collaboration, I guess is
Exactly.
what I'm going to call it.
Yeah, definitely.
And how could we make that happen? Why isn't it happening more now, do you think, Kwei?
I would say I'd love to know. I would honestly, I would. I think there are. I think from a digital perspective, there is a sort of established independent type of group that's been put together where I think charities contribute to. But you know, I th- I don't know why. I would love to for us and some charities, and we've been reaching out to charities and said, listen, we're doing this, or we're looking at certain Microsoft tools. We know that you are as well. It'd be great to just have 45 minutes of your time. Could we just talk about what you've done, what we've done? We've been burnt a couple of times. It'd be great to just advise you on that, or it'd be great to understand that in this area you seem to be making much more progress than us. It'd be great to just. So I've been having individual conversations, Age UK and other charities, but it would be great to try and have a sustainable sort of network where we could just come together. And you know what? There could be just synergies. So, for instance, there's a company X which provides a tool. If both of you combined with what pots of money you have, you may be able to get those economies of scale. And that sort of strength of power, I think, and approach is, I feel very strongly about that. Rather than charities paying X to this company, then another charity's paying X, and then another charity's paying X. But if we had a bit more of a joined up approach, obviously looking at, making sure from a governance perspective we could do it, it'd be great to make that pound stretch even further.
I agree. I think there's so much more we could do with our collective purchasing power, and also just trying to influence the change that we want to see, whether it's ethical development of these tools or just how we share learning as well. I see
Yeah.
that happening a bit organically in the sector, but
Yeah.
not in a really joined up way
Yeah,
that I think is
exactly.
going to be really necessary in order
Yeah.
for the sector's wider digital adoption. So thank
Yeah.
you for raising that. I think it's going to really get a lot of people thinking about the value of collaboration. So when we spoke a few weeks ago, you shared
Yeah.
a bit of a bombshell with me, which I thought was really interesting, about how you've built into Scope's business plan that
Yes.
your role will
Yeah.
be deleted by April 2026.
Yeah.
So can you tell us more about why
Yeah.
you've done this and what it will
Yeah.
mean for Scope?
Of course, controversial it was. People thought it was a gimmick, but I'm sticking to it. Including an end date for my role within our digital strategy and the plan going forward. I think it demonstrates my commitment to delivering value and ensuring that the organization can sustain its digital transformation independently of me. So it's not, it's Quay's strategy, or we're delivering Quay's strategy, or where's Quay, or Quay, the vision for the next 8 years. I think it encourages a culture of continuous improvement, and it prepares Scope to really be in a strong position to know exactly what is needed, after that time, for future leadership transition. So, really taking my name out of the equation is important, because it's not about, Quay, what legacy do you want to leave, but no, I want to see disability and equality removed. That's what you want to see, because that's not focused on me, focused on the organization. And I think creating that burning platform, important, keeps me thinking, oh, well, okay, you know what? We'll just take another year for that. It makes me think, right, hit a roadblock. I need to deliver this. I need to deliver this because this will move us forward, which helps us with our strategy, which helps teams, which helps staff, etc. By doing so, it's helping to continually think of innovations and innovative ways to deliver on the points that we want within our digital strategy. So very much like how you may jump into a car, if all three of us are going to Birmingham, on the road that goes to Birmingham, don't know what the road goes to, it's, oh, this road is cut off. we're not going to say, oh, well, let's just go back home then. If we need to get to a destination, and I'm probably going to go down the dodgy country roads and something else, or, if our car breaks down, okay, fine, let's get a few of those electric scooters and see how far we can, get. But, the point is that you try to find a way and you're determined. You've got to be at a destination. And I just feel by doing so, people feel reassured that my motives are right for being here. Of course, everyone wants to have a successful career and do what they do. Everyone wants to do that, but removing self and trying to really focus on the value you bring to a role. It's just something which I've been raised with and brought up with, and no one's asked me to do that. I put that burning platform on myself, and I just think it sets a good example to my teams, and also it creates this sort of, I think, atmosphere where you're questioning your motives and why you're doing something and why you're in a role. So yeah, that's why I did it, essentially.
I really love that.
Well, quite apart from having the vision of me, you, and Zoe going down country lanes on electric scooters now,
Yeah.
which is an image that's going to be quite hard to get out of my head.
But we'll get there. We'll get there on electric
scooters.
We
will. Christmas do. Who's in? Let's do it on the line bikes.
We'll go for it. I think we might be taking the line bikes out of their area of jurisdiction, but we might get into trouble for that. I can't wait. But you're right, and I think it also creates that, as you said, within the team, it creates that sense of succession, right? So other people stepping up to take on the responsibility of the things that you're putting into action. And I've set up my business to hopefully be that for organizations as well, where we don't want to be there long term. We can put you on the path and put you in the right direction, but then it's about the responsibility that you then hand over to the rest of the team, the rest of the organization to then carry on that journey. So I think you're absolutely right, and we look forward to coming to your leaving party.
My P45 being sent to me on the 1st of April. Oh yeah, that thing. Yeah, I'll be coming back for a therapy session probably with you both.
Oh, do.
Yeah. No, I will. It'd be, you know what? I'll commit to that as well. So come in and tell you what it was like post April 26th and where the organisation is. Because what I think as well is that digital strategy that sort of said till 26 or beyond, it's going to change. Things change all the time, and I think it will be a different need then as well. What scope will actually need going forward, and just saying, oh, I'll just sort of slope into that role. I don't know. I don't think that's what I want to do, or that's the best thing to keep things fresh and keep them going in the right direction. And it's a personal thing. It may not be right for everyone, but I'm very much committed to doing that.
I think it's brilliant, and it reminds me of, I had this fantastic conversation last year with a small charity CEO who said he'd been reflecting on what success really is, and he said success is when you set something up amazing and no one knows your name. And that really made me think about what success looks like. The fact that you've gone in, you've started something, you've handed power over, you've delegated to the right people to help it scale, and then you just quietly leave when the time is for you to leave. It's a great, really humble attitude to leadership.
But it's what we should. I think we should all try to take that approach, and it's refreshing, Paul, that you've sort of that's what you're trying to do with your own business, because you could focus on self if you wish to, but just personally, I just prefer that the approach of that's what's going to make the most impact, is being able to take that approach and not thinking that you need to be the center of everything. It's the cause for which you're trying to be there to change. So focus on that is fine, and I'll look for another role and do whatever it is that I want to do at that time, and as you said, Zoe, just quietly slope off my P45, in my Scope t-shirt, you know, and that was it. Jumped back on the Lion bike back to Birmingham. That's going to be the thing of this podcast, isn't it? It's the Lion, yeah.
From leadership to line bikes, I could
The Lion bike.
see the
Like
title
that.
already.
I like
see
that.
the title already. So just before we wrap up,
Yeah.
you also are working on a DEI program, which I think kind of started to come together after the riots, called Apex. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah. So Apex, and the reason why I chose the word Apex is to, you know, to sort of reach your pinnacle, to reach, you know, the best of what you can achieve. And the reason why I started it, actually I developed it in January, because coming to Scope, like I know largely in the charity sector, you know, it does lack diversity, especially for the populations that they're trying to serve. And Scope's trying to serve, you know, all disabled people, and disability, proven, you know, disproportionately affects people of color, and from minority ethnic backgrounds. And what was really interesting in seeing Scope is, you know, trying to think of a way of encouraging colleagues from these backgrounds, my own background and other backgrounds, and people that may want to work for Scope, to see that there are no opportunities that, you know, they couldn't reach. So being an executive director who's Afro-Caribbean, I take very seriously my responsibility of setting a good example of that, and really showing people that with, you know, hard work and support, like I've received so much support throughout my career, and I want you to do that. I've received lots of support from both people from a minority ethnic group, and also from previous white colleagues that saw something in me that, you know, they wanted to support me with, and that's the only reason why I'm here now. It's the influence of my family, or, you know, my wife, children, but also colleagues that supported me and invested in me. So I really wanted to do that, and I think it was really interesting because what the program aims to create a more inclusive environment here at Scope, an impactful one, and opportunities to develop confidence, and those ways of getting involved in more conversations, decision making as a person of color. And you know, the program involves various initiatives of visiting speakers, and one-to-one support with myself, from these groups, and really helping people to have the confidence to reach their pinnacle. And did it in January, you know, went through it with HR, refining it, and then the awful riots happened in the summer. And we made some tweaks on that because I was only going to take 5 people in the organization through it, capacity-wise, but being able to reflect on the race riots, which didn't come as a surprise for many of us from a non-white background, no surprise. And I thought, you know, Kwesi, you're here for a period of time, got to try and do what you can. So thought about my diary, thought about, you know, this being a priority for me at Scope, and now I'm taking 15 colleagues. So 15 applied, and all 15 are coming on the program. And we're a small charity of about 750 staff. So it's a privilege for me to be able to reflect on the riots and really use that as a springboard for this to lead to a positive outcome.
Amazing. Well, another fantastic example of you really living your values there and really changing the culture through the way you lead. So, Kwei, thank you so much. There's been so much in this conversation, everything from AI to inclusion to line bikes.
Yes.
So we'll see you for that line bike road trip soon. We'll look forward to it.
Definitely.
Come back in April 2026 and we'll do a full debrief with you.
That'd be great. Thank you very much for having me on the podcast.
It was our pleasure. Thank you for coming on. Thank you so much to Kwei for joining us. I do hope that you found this an energising start to the season. I certainly did. I'm never going to look at a line bike or leadership in the same way again. And it was a rallying call to collaborate much more across the sector. So what a brilliant optimistic note to start the year on.
And very much chimes with the Charity AI Task Force as well. Collaboration is going to be key. And thank you to Kwei from me as well. We look forward to having him back on the podcast after his mic drop resignation in 2026. He'll always be welcome. And as always, we really do appreciate that you've listened all the way through to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for doing so. You can support the podcast by leaving us a 5-star review wherever you listen to us. It really does help us to reach more people. So if you've enjoyed what you've heard, do rate us and share us with a friend.
Thank you so much. We'll see you again very soon.
See you then. Bye for now.
Bye for now.